Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the Starline by an actor, comedian, writer, TV host, political commentator, television personality, author, and radio host of Tell Me Everything. His New York Times bestseller is Separation of Church and Hate. We welcome John Fugelsang.
What a pleasure. Hello.
John, let's go beyond the mic. You're live because two people broke a promise to God. How has comedy helped you avoid therapy?
Well, because I can't afford the therapy I actually require. My mom was a nun from the segregated South. She went into the convent straight out of high school. The convent put her through nursing school, sent her off to Africa to work with lepers in Malawi. Before they sent her there, though, they briefly stationed her in Brooklyn, New York. And my dad was a Franciscan brother. He had grown up in Brooklyn and became a Franciscan out of high school. He wore the brown robes and the rope belt and taught history to Catholic boys and looked like the lost Jedi of Flatbush. And my father, the brother, met my mother, the sister, fell madly in love, even though he had promised God he never would. He had to be right, though. He was just very platonic, never crossed a line, stayed friends, was her pen pal for the years she was in Africa, writing nonstop about what was going on back in the States. And eventually, after 10 years, she came back and he convinced her to leave the convent and go on a date. So they were married 2 months later, and I've only begun to process the guilt I feel because technically I'm not supposed to be here.
In today's polarized political climate, what makes you confident that you could break down a topic in a way where people would listen?
I never have that confidence. I do this all the time, and I don't presume that my words are strong enough to move anyone, but I'm here to offer support to those who need it, and that's why I wrote this book. A lot of us grew up in a world where we thought Christianity was the stuff that the character of Jesus talked about, and my book is for believers and atheists. I really wrote it for believers and non-believers alike, for anyone who's ever going to have to deal with a mean or hardcore right-wing or prejudiced Christian nationalist or fundamentalist. And it's about how if you're arguing with a right-wing Christian fundamentalist on almost any subject that divides us, chances are, even if you're an atheist, Jesus is on your side. And I got tired of seeing this religion of love and empathy and peace being used as a cloaking device for a mean, tax-free clique that preached superiority over service. I mean, Jesus' movement's all about humility. Right-wing Christianity more and more is just about conservative Christian domination of society. I don't hear these folks talking about helping the poor or caring for the sick, which Jesus commands individuals and nations to do in Matthew 25. I really don't hear them talk about welcome the stranger. And I know so many people who've grown up religious and now consider themselves spiritual because they've just become turned off to the hypocrisy of these guys. And I wrote this book for them and for anyone who loves or lives with or works with a mean Christian, because you don't have to believe in Jesus' literal fact to argue with these folks and point out that they're not really following him. And I don't believe you could ever actually sway someone, right? But you will reach their kids. You will reach their wives. You will reach the other folks at the cookout when you're talking about empathy and they're talking about which groups are bad.
In your book, you say, quote, if the Virgin Mary came back, would the Vatican let her say Mass, unquote. But in today's climate, isn't the deeper question whether anyone would believe who she was and who she claimed to be?
Yes, you're probably right about that. We all want a lot of proof, especially people with faith. People with faith tend to want a lot of proof. But I sort of realized that when I was 14 or 15 years old. I was like, wait a second. My church wouldn't let the Virgin Mary say Mass? God thinks that 51% of humanity is not fit to hold the priesthood? It didn't make sense to me. The strongest and best Christians I knew were women growing up. And as I got older and read the Bible more, I realized, there's really nothing in the Bible that justifies that. There were 3 women that went everywhere with Jesus and the apostles, Mary Magdalene and Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus. But the guys who wrote the Bible decided, no, there weren't 15 apostles. There were 12 apostles and 3 groupies. Jesus is the biggest feminist in the entire Bible. He comes into a world where women are legal property and are considered unclean in the eyes of God because of the nasty things their bodies do to create life. And Jesus treats women as equals. He violates the laws of his own religion and teaches women talks to women, including foreign women, like the Samaritan lady at the well he wasn't allowed to speak with. He allows women to touch him, like the bleeding woman, which made him ritually unclean in the eyes of God, but it healed her, and he never judged her for it. I mean, the more you read about the guy, the more I can't believe these misogynists pretend they follow him. And writing about how, if God loves everyone equally, then God's a feminist. That wound up being my favorite chapter to work on.
Late night TV has always been a reality check on the political climate. What makes right now an important moment for late night TV?
I'm sure your listeners are all very keenly tuned into what's happening, and this big debate of, is this government censorship of Kimmel and Colbert, or is this just merely an abuse of power where government is publicly threatening private corporations to do its bidding to make mergers go through? I mean, it's a scale of corruption that we've just never seen before. And there's so many young people who are going to learn about censorship and free speech and abuse of power because of what we've witnessed over the past week or so with Mr. Kimmel. I was saying last week on my show that I'm certain that Bob Iger doesn't want censorship to be in the first paragraph of his obituary. He'll patch this up. And sure enough, he did. But the great irony of what we've just witnessed is Donald Trump just saved Jimmy Kimmel's show. All that hate, so stupid, totally blew up in his face and backfired. And now Kimmel's going to be Library of Congress and a free speech hero forever. And these guys will go down in history, especially Brendan Carr, as a bunch of, scoundrels who tried to shut up a popular comedian. They could have gotten this guy off the air so many ways. They could have done it in a subtle way where they just sat around and in 6 months said, look, man, you're 12% with the demo. We can't afford this budget anymore. They could have done it the usual way, but they're thirsty. And they're messy and they're sloppy, and they had to have a scalp they could wave around and brag about it. So Brendan Carr goes on Benny Johnson's zombie show and says all this and pretty much gives away the entire game plan, which has always been the game plan of Project 2025. These guys, they're like the gang that couldn't smear straight.
Unforced errors.
I could give them tips on how to sabotage careers. I've done it to myself plenty of times. They don't seem to know how to do it right.
His New York Times bestseller is Separation of Church and Hate. We welcome John Fugelsang. And John, it's time for the Rocky Nate. 8 random questions. Uh-oh. Answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. There's absolutely no pressure.
Okay. None at all. Sure. Let's try it.
Best thing about your child?
He's beautiful. And he's named after my father and Henry Miller, because that covers the whole spectrum of male behavior.
In the cartoon Calvin and Hobbes, are you more like Calvin or more like Hobbes?
I'm much more like Calvin, but I pretend to the outside world I'm more like Hobbes.
Biggest misconception about you?
That I'm Katie Lang.
Best interview you did was with who?
The most famous one was with George Harrison, I think. I've done a lot of interviews with everybody, but George was special. He meant a lot to me. He was raised Catholic and then went deeper into spirituality. And he came by my studio with Ravi Shankar. I was very young. I was a terrible interviewer. We thought we were getting a 10-minute soundbite, and I was such a bad, raw interviewer who had so many dumb questions about spirituality. He stayed for 4 hours. We put a guitar in his hands. He played 4 songs. And he was diagnosed 2 months later. That wound up being his final televised performance.
Favorite movie line you quote too often is?
We're going to need a bigger boat.
Tea or coffee, and how many cups before you become human?
It really depends on how sick I am from having too much coffee. I had nothing but tea this weekend, and I felt like such a civilized person. But generally, I freebase coffee to get started in the morning. It's like that.
Favorite guilty pleasure TV show that you'll actually admit watching?
Ooh, man, you're not making this easy on a kid. Favorite guilty pleasure? Fox News.
Favorite Traveling Wilbury song is obviously...
Oh, man, what are you doing to me? You know what I'll say? I'll say one no one else will say. If You Belong to Me, from the second album, sung by Bob Dylan, because George Harrison sang it. The only time it's ever been performed live, and George did it on my show.
John Fugelsang's New York Times bestseller, Separation of Church and Hate, and he joins us beyond the mic for the back half. John, what's your favorite scripture? How did your parents' religious background shape, both positively and negatively, your relationship with it?
My favorite scripture would have to be Matthew 25, known to some as the parable of the goats and the sheep, known to some as the judgment of nations, where Jesus says that he's going to gather all the individuals and all the nations and judge them. based on really 4 basic criteria. This is Jesus giving his marching orders of what you'd have to do to be a Christian society. It's individuals and nations. And his 4 criteria on what's going to get you to heaven are: did you take care of the poor? Did you take care of the sick? Did you welcome the stranger? And did you care for those in prison? As you did to the least of these, you did it to me. It's one of his most iconic pieces. But what he's essentially saying is you're not going to get any credit for how loudly you pray, how much money you give your church, how devoted you are, how much you scream at women outside clinics, how much you persecute migrants or trans kids. Jesus says 4 criteria: take care of the poor, take care of the sick, welcome the stranger, be kind to those in prison. That's it. It's like his memo to the Heritage Foundation. And it's why you'll never see quotes of Jesus. They never fight to put Jesus quotes on a classroom wall or a courthouse wall.
You've said, quote, inner peace can save your life, but an external rage is an adequate backup, unquote. Do you believe today's world can return to a more reasonable time, or will rage continue?
I do believe it can return, but I don't know if we're going to get there. Certainly, legislation's not going to happen to do it. You can't unwire people. You can't put this genie back in the bottle. We've got this problem with a generation of young men who are being radicalized by an algorithm that's making some guys a lot of money the more we hate each other. And that's the reality. We can remember when conservatives and progressives would be in the same family and disagree, sometimes violently, but it was like sports. We didn't hate each other. Now, and I don't just blame the algorithm, Donald Trump is particularly awful and racist and dishonest. There's no way you can say you follow the teachings of Jesus and the policies of Trump on immigration alone. You really can't do that. But I think that we have to get together as a society and agree that we got an internet problem and a young male problem. And we have 110 guns in this country for every 100 people, and we're not doing anything to make it harder for young men to get their hands on mass kill weaponry. And what we're witnessing with this latest wave of horrible political terrorism is that these guys aren't playing for a team. There's not a left and right paradigm here. Luigi Mangione murdered that guy because of what healthcare companies do, but he didn't do it for the left or for the right. This Republican kid in Pennsylvania who shot at Trump with an AR-15, he didn't do it for the left or the right. And this guy who shot Charlie Kirk, I mean, they're still fighting over trying to see who owns him and who claims him and who he's a part of. And I think we have to realize that the old left-right paradigm might not apply in this strange new world of insane algorithmic hate. And we have to start thinking bigger. And maybe I'd like to think that our friends on the left and the right can get together and say, hey, what can we do as a society if we admit that young men aren't having sex anymore? They're staying home with virtual girlfriends, talking to other bro dudes or bots, and getting radicalized by white supremacists. And what are we going to do as a culture to make it harder for these emotionally unstable young men to easily get their hands on products designed to kill lots of people really fast? Because we got a problem with young men, and young men are the ones who are using these guns. They can pin it on trans people or bump stocks or Confederate flags, but it's a problem with disaffected young males who easily get their hands on guns when they feel hopeless. Social media has given everyone a megaphone. When did you decide to use yours for outrage or just empathy? I mean, I just try to use it for humor, but I get too preachy because my mom and dad. So I try as hard as I can to have a joke every time I post anything, because I don't just want to be one of these voices out there hollering and preaching. And it's one of the reasons why it was really good to write this book and to put to do a book that's very pro God, very pro Jesus, very pro Scripture, very pro being nice to each other, based on what Jesus says, but written for atheists and for believers who are disillusioned by where organized Christianity in this country is going. You say, quote, I realize some of you may be starting to get upset, so let me do what my court-appointed therapist calls de-escalation, unquote. Who do you think will read your book? And if you can't change one mind, was it worth it? Yeah, of course. I'm not trying to reach right-wing folks. I didn't write this for them. A lot of people are saying, I'm buying your book for my right-wing racist uncle. And I'm like, don't. He's going to throw it at you. Don't do that. This book is for y'all. This book is for people who have to live with these folks. If you have to deal with some guy who thinks that believing in a talking snake is Christian, but hating immigrants is Christian too, then I wrote it for you, because we have to live with these people. We can't hate them. In many cases, they're the family we still love. They're our coworkers. We do have to beat them, because they're trying to push a very narrow right-wing version of their religion onto all of us and our entire civic culture and our politics. And their narrow version of Christianity has nothing to do with the character of Jesus. I'd have no problem with these guys fighting for a Christian nation if they'd fight for anything Jesus actually talked about. But on the death penalty, on taxation, on looking out for the poor, on nonviolence, turn the other cheek, they are consistently opposed to this Jesus they use as a prop.
Do you think the push to One Direction will cause an immediate snapback soon?
You mean the boy band, the One Direction? Because that was like really quite a backlash against a lot of lip syncing, kids who grew up on wrong job.
Milli Vanilli would argue with you, but we move on.
Well, they weren't a boy band. And man, most boy bands are actually man groups. I want to point out they're not freaking bands, but you didn't ask that question.
Do you think that the push to One Direction will cause a snapback?
Always does. Always does, and that's both ways. We're witnessing that right now. There's always been a negative backlash to any progress in the history of this country. We ended slavery, right? And it was Christians who propped up slavery, but it was Christ followers like Frederick Douglass and the Quakers and Harriet Tubman who pushed back. Slavery ends and we got Jim Crow and we got American apartheid. So then we had civil rights and voting rights, but then we got Nixon and the Southern strategy and the drug war. So then we got the first black president. And that led to this racist who spreads lies about people based on race, like he's not really a citizen, or there's Haitians who are illegals eating pets, all racist lies the media decided were acceptable. We went from Obama to a guy who has cops beaten on the Capitol steps for a lie. So every time there's been any kind of progress with racial equality in this country, there's always been a backlash. But the backlash I'm waiting for is from young people, Gen Z and millennials, who are going to have a decency and intelligence backlash against what they've witnessed the last several years in our governance. If I was a young person, I just would be dying to get into politics and make this country as nice as possible.
What's the hardest part about trying to be both funny and faithful to facts in a time where truth is optional?
That sometimes you want to focus on the facts and winning an argument over being amusing and entertaining.
Who keeps you in check today?
The rest of the world. But if they don't laugh at my joke, I know that joke's done.
What would your parents think of the book?
That's a great question. My father, I worked on this book for a long time, and I was told for a long time that this book was not commercial. And I had many agents and managers over the years begging me not to talk about religion in my act or in the TV and radio I did. My dad was in hospice in 2010 when I wrote the first draft of this book proposal, and my father hit send. He hit send on my laptop to submit my first proposal. And 15 years later, almost to the month, that book hit the New York Times Bestseller list. So I'll be trying to make sense of my emotions over this for a really long time. But I had so many people over the years, so many publishers say no to this idea of how to use the Bible when debating a right-wing Christian. The subtitle of my book is A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible from Fundamentalist, Fascist, and Flock-Fleecing Frauds. And to see that the week we released the book, I had 3 cable news appearances canceled. We had no mainstream media support, and yet we still cracked the top 50 on Amazon bestsellers and made the New York Times bestseller list. And so I'd like to think that would make my parents happy, because it shows that there are so many people of faith and atheists who are conscientious and care about this stuff, and who don't want to see Christianity taken over by mean people and racists.
John Fugelsang joins us beyond the mic, and we called him back right after we finished because we had to get him to answer 5 impossible questions. John?
Oh, those are my favorite kind. Okay, great.
Do you have hope for the future of late night TV, and why?
Oh, God, I thought you were going to ask me if I had hope for the future of humanity. This is much easier. Yeah, I do have hope for the future of late night TV. Absolutely. Look what we just witnessed. The audience is dwindling, no doubt, but broadcast isn't going away yet. And, when they talk about how the numbers for young viewers aren't up there for late night, well, that's for the live broadcast, but the young people are watching it online the next day. We're always going to want to have some kind of entertainment before we go to bed. I grew up revering Carson and Letterman, and maybe it won't be at the same scale, at the same budget. The way we consume our entertainment is changing. But, look what happened this week. They tried to do, you can call it censorship, or you can just call it abuse of power to coerce a private corporation to self-censor. But Donald Trump just saved Jimmy Kimmel's job this week. Donald Trump just added at least 5 more years to late night's lifespan with what he did. And it showed, people were against it. It was actually the best thing that could happen to late night. And what we saw now, I mean, Jimmy Kimmel's going to run for years. He's going to be in the Library of Congress. He's going to get the Presidential Medal of Freedom when he's 70. And it's all because Donald Trump and Brendan Carr were a little too messy.
So you thought that was easy? Let's go to the harder one. Top five late night hosts of all time, from least to best.
Well, from least, my top five? Well, they're all great. Least to best. Well, let me think. I got to say, Letterman's my number one. Jack Parr is probably my number two. Carson's probably my number three. Good Lord. Who's my last two? God, does Daily Show count as late night?
Sure.
No, they don't. It's late night.
No.
Okay, I'll take Daily Show. I'll take Daily Show because I just did the Daily Show 2 nights ago and they were lovely to me. And let me throw in Joan Rivers' old show on Fox, so I get one woman in there.
Very nice. John, what was the hardest and easiest chapters to write of your book?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I think the easiest chapter was the homophobia chapter. I've been writing it for years, ever since I was a teenager and began to realize that all this homophobia was really against Jesus, and that the people who were quoting parts of the Bible to justify being mean to gay people were not quoting Jesus, but were quoting Leviticus, which nobody follows and nobody believes in. So the easiest part was the gay chapter. It was the longest chapter, but I've known for years how to debunk all those passages that people take out of context. The hardest chapter was probably writing about St. Paul, because I didn't want to write a chapter on St. Paul. I wasn't interested, but I realized if I'm writing a book about what Christianity started out as and how it got here, you can't really do it without talking about Jesus's very uptight PR guy who took over the movement. And when all the apostles were getting killed, Paul was a Roman citizen and a Pharisee going through the Roman Empire saying, no, really, it's just like Judaism, except you can have bacon and get eternal forgiveness and keep your foreskin. And I realized I couldn't get to from Jesus to now without explaining how Paul, did a lot of good and kind of totally messed it up. So that was the hardest. And my favorite chapter I wrote was on feminism, because it was a cast off idea. Let me write a chapter about not being sexist. And that was the chapter that blew my mind, where I learned the most that Jesus is by far the biggest feminist in the Bible. And so many of the Bible stories we're taught about his interactions with women, they teach us as kids before we're old enough to know how revolutionary he was. If
you could ask any higher power any one question, what would it be?
This weekend's lottery numbers. I'm very prepared. Krishna, I don't care, whoever it is. I'll take Vishnu. If you got the numbers, I'll bend the knee.
As fashion shifts, so does society's pressure on women. As you say in your book, quote, we've ushered in a new golden era of slut shaming, a time where the culture, the media, and the men demand women sexualize themselves to prove their societal value and then punish the ones who dare to enjoy it, unquote.
Wow.
With the female to male ratio now increasing every year, will this change?
I hope so. I really hope so.
But will it?
It's hard for me to say. Well, what changed? The way men treat women? Yeah, it's going to change. It's already changed in our lifetime. I mean, come on. There's stuff that guys got away with all the time. Watch Mad Men. There's stuff that, I loved Me Too. Like, to me Too was proof that humans are getting better as a species. Me Too was the human race standing up and saying to certain men, you can be replaced. And I thought that was great. When I was a kid, I had to develop a sense of humor to talk to girls. I didn't know you were allowed to just be a monster. And so to see the entire culture standing up and say no to this, and actually have consequences for men abusing women, powerful men abusing women, I'm not into personal destruction and tearing someone's life apart, but it's very exciting to be alive at a time to witness this much change, and that it's never been harder for a man to get away with abusing a woman or a child than it is right now. And that's why I have a lot of hope.
Let's sneak in a few more with John Fugelsang. Beyond the mic, who influences you now?
Good question. That's living. Who influences me? I mean, I'm heavily influenced by Jesus. That's pretty much what I've been writing about for the last year and a half in this book. But I'm influenced by artists and writers and academics and journalists and activists and a lot of comedians. Not too many politicians, but there's a few that really do inspire me. I think that Bernie Sanders is just terrific. And I think that, people like this young guy, James Tallarico out of Texas, are really walking the walk and talking the talk about spirituality. And I think Buttigieg is great on Christianity as well. I'm inspired by so many people. I just saw Bob Dylan live for the 65th time. He's 84, rearranged all the songs, and it gave me so much inspiration to get through the next month.
Why the next month?
Oh, no. I mean, the Dillon show I saw was so great. It carried me on a wave for a month of just a buoyancy of just being so inspired. But Bob Dylan at age 84 doesn't care about what we want to see him do. He doesn't care about delivering us the greatest hits. He cares about making the statement he wants to make. And a guy as rich and powerful and iconic as him could just be a greatest hits jukebox, but instead he's challenging himself. I recommend everybody watch the Farm Aid set and really listen to it. He's hiding under a hoodie behind a little Christmas tree on his piano, rearranging songs so deeply that it's almost unrecognizable. But he opened with Masters of War at Farm Aid at age 84, and the arrangement, he changes the songs to fit his voice now, and it's perfect. It doesn't sound like anything you've ever heard, and there's nobody out there playing music like him. This old 84-year-old skinny Jew from Minnesota is, I wasn't alive for the folk movement, but he's still inspiring me.
Well, what's the best concert you've ever seen live that wasn't Bob?
My all-time top concert would probably be the concert for George Harrison at the Royal Albert Hall. In 2001, it was a year to the day after George Harrison died. I had met George, and I interviewed him, what wound up being his last public performance. I gave him a guitar, and he played 4 songs on camera for us. And this was Paul McCartney and Ringo and Clapton, Ravi Shankar, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Monty Python, Billy Preston. By far the greatest concert I've ever experienced. It was like a holy event. And the best single artist I ever saw was Leonard Cohen. I flew to Canada when he launched his tour. Those are the only 2 times I've used a passport to see a concert, the concert for George and Leonard Cohen, and they were the 2 greatest concerts of my life.
John, what's the biggest misconception about your book?
That it is anti-Christian. I'm getting attacked by these right-wingers saying that I'm going after good Christian folks, and I'm not. My book is outrageously pro-Jesus, pro-Bible, pro-spirituality, pro-God, pro-love. I'm anti-hypocrite. I'm anti-douchebag. I'm anti-using a movement based on love as a cloaking device to gain power and be mean to people.
Do you have hope for the future?
Oh, yeah. I think I'm not an optimist. I'm a recovering cynic. I know how bad everything is, and I know how bleak it could all be. But I think hope is logical. I think hope makes perfect sense. And I have so much faith that young people, Gen Z, millennials, those yet to come, are going to bring about an incredible backlash to the era we are living in, a backlash of intelligence and decency and compassion and guts and caring for the less fortunate. I am so filled with hope that young people are going to want to just cancel out the ugliest parts of the 20th century we've seen resurfacing the past few years. And I encourage everyone to be healthy and be around to see it. If you had told me back in the 90s that we would have a black president and decriminalize cannabis and marriage equality for gay people, I would not have believed it. I've seen so much progress and seen humans get so much better.
What's the one thing you need to change in your own perspective of the world?
Oh, me. I just got to work on myself. That's it. The only race is with yourself. And the only person you ever need to be superior to Bastardized Hemingway, is your former self. So I want to change the world, but I also want to work on me.
It's time for the One Big Question with John Fugelsang Beyond the Mic. If you could have 5 uninterrupted minutes with someone who completely disagrees with you, how would you use it, and what topic would you discuss?
Wow. Living or not living?
Up to you.
It might have been Charlie Kirk, 2 weeks ago. Someone who completely disagrees with me? Wow. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would be pointless with Trump. I've worked with him before. He's just, he can't register anything. I think can it be on camera?
Sure.
Can I? Okay, George W. Bush. because that guy's got a lot to answer for, and Donald Trump has made it so he can skate. The worst thing Trump has done is make Bush look better.
He was Calvin, but pretends to be Hobbes, freebase coffee, and
nice.
wants you to read his book, Separation of Church and Hate. John Fugelsang, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Bless you and your very attractive listeners.
And that, my friends, is Beyond the Mic. If you're enjoying these conversations, please check out another Beyond the Mic episode to find more actors, artists, and people you need to know. We'd also appreciate a like and subscribe on the Good Pods app.